This is The Cluttered Path, stories about life and the human experience. Let's begin with a word. That word is vital. So the word vital refers to something that is of absolute importance. If something's vital, it must be accounted for. It cannot be ignored because it could mean the difference between success and failure, or even life and death. Let's tell a story to illustrate. In 1982, during the Falklands War, the British ship HMS Sheffield was struck by an Exocet missile. I had to go look up how to pronounce that, by the way. Just a side note. So back to the story. There was a large explosion and flames engulfed the vessel. The ship's commander, a man named Captain Sam Salt, was thrown into the biggest leadership challenge of his life. In the middle of all that smoke, noise, and chaos, he calmly identified two vital objectives. Number one, save as many lives as possible. Number two, prevent the ship's sensitive equipment from falling into enemy hands. Nothing mattered at that point except those two things. From there, he proceeded to make a series of very timely decisions. Number one, recover the crew members from the damaged area of the ship. Number two, treat the wounded. Number three, fight the fires. And then after about 4 hours of firefighting, Captain Salt, he determined that they needed to abandon ship. So he issued the order. They destroyed their sensitive equipment and abandoned ship. So this scenario, it gives us an example where the captain exercised clear-headed leadership at very crucial moments. Now, sadly, lives were lost, but the commander's decisions were very timely, and it actually led to the rescue of 242 out of the 281 crew members. Now, this story suggests that when chaos encroaches, leadership is essential. As human beings, we have thousands of years of lessons learned on the topic of leadership. And the lessons we have led us to the conclusion that there are some very specific, absolutely essential or vital objectives of leadership. So today we're going to discuss the number one vital objective of leadership. Without this, you will experience lackluster results at best, or complete failure at worst.
We want to avoid failure. Well, we like to do that. Good morning, Todd. How are you doing?
Doing well, sir. Good to talk to you, man. Looking forward to this discussion.
Yep. Same here. It was good to kind of get back last time after our sort of extended summer break. And looking forward to the discussion today.
Had a nice summer break and glad to be back at the microphone. So let's just dig in. Vital objective number one. What is that? Are you ready for it? Here it goes. Accomplish the mission. Now, when I say accomplish the mission, it's a self-evident truth. I mean, it's a bit of a letdown, actually. I mean, of course, we have to accomplish the mission. I mean, and you might be listening and saying, tell me something I don't know, dummy. But there are actually a lot of books and training out there centered around the topic of accomplishing the mission. It's surprising how many good organizations fail simply because they've drifted away from their core mission. I mean, things like distractions, infighting, drama, just friction between groups, they can steer an organization off course. And how do you increase the probability of accomplishing the mission? And I submit that there are some practices you can adopt, whether you're an individual or a team. These practices can help you succeed. And we're going to cover 4 topics today. 1, you need to define the mission. Number 2, you got to plan out the mission. Number 3, execute the mission. And then 4, very important, you can't leave any of this out. You need to measure results. So let's get into it. Define the mission. And what this means is you must develop a simple, clear-cut mission for whatever you're trying to accomplish. And the benefits here are you're defining your purpose. You're establishing a direction where you want to go. And that mission guides future decisions. And so after developing that clear-cut mission, you can't just keep it to yourself. The next phase of defining the mission means you have to effectively communicate that simple, clear-cut mission out to family members, friends, or stakeholders if you're an organization. So the benefits of communicating that mission out are, first off, you're putting a stake in the ground. If you're part of an organization, you're saying, hey, everybody, this is what's going on. This is what we need to do. And it tells people why. So you're defining a mission. It gives people the why of what you're doing here. And then also, as you effectively communicate the mission, it's going to inspire confidence in the team. And also, if you're the individual, communicating that mission to yourself, it really helps things gel in your mind, and it really inspires confidence in yourself. So communicating that mission is vitally important.
Yes. In my career, I can name many times when this personally affected me. When I had good leaders, good management that is able to say, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing. I knew then what I was supposed to do, right? And that was it was empowering. It reinforced, my own goals and objectives of trying to make things better and accomplishing the stated mission. So it was very critical for me.
Yeah, it's powerful. I mean,
Yep.
Working for a company or a team or whatever, a government organization, anything, when you have a good leader that stands up and communicates effectively, hey, this is why we're here. It just inspires confidence. I mean, good things come out of that. And you leave these sessions like, oh my word, that's cool. I'm glad to be here. And then conversely, I've been in meetings where leaders didn't really express or convey the mission effectively. There were communication issues. They may have had a really good mission statement and a plan, but they communicated it in a manner that I was like, ooh, I'm not very confident that we're going to succeed. So that can happen.
Yes, it can.
But let's put some more legs on this. Developing and effectively communicating that mission. What do you do? So if you're leading an organization and you're developing a mission statement, what you're doing is you're just saying, look, this is why we're here. This is our purpose. And these are the specific things we're going to do or build for the world. I used to work at Cisco Systems, and I was there in 2011. This was a notoriously bad year financially for Cisco. And I read an article on this. And I didn't know this at the time. We just were in the trenches of going through all of this bad stuff with people getting laid off. But here's what was going on. And we have the advantage of retrospect and being able to read articles about what happened. And here's what happened. Bad ideas. That's what was going on. In the years leading up to 2011, Cisco had jumped into the consumer electronics business. There was this thing called a flip camera that they were selling to consumers, or trying to. I don't know that they ever sold any, but there was also internet TV set-top boxes. And there was also this product called an UMI consumer video system. After the financial downfall, all of these products had to be canceled. And then same year, 2011, at the annual partner summit, Cisco, they had to make just a painful admission. They told the partners, hey, look, we've neglected our core business. And they talked about competitors, Arista and IBM. They'd caught them by surprise with new features that they were releasing with their LAN switching and whatnot. So stark admission there. And there was just this devastating impact on the company itself within this bad economy. Poor financials. First off, there was an 18% drop in net income to Cisco. And internally, John Chambers issued a memo saying, look, hey, we've lost our focus. We've lost our momentum, and we've lost credibility with the industry. And so Cisco then had to embark on a major restructuring event. And they started this thing called the voluntary early retirement. And what they did was they said, hey, employees that are over 50 years old, if you've been with the company this long and XYZ, you can take early retirement. And they told the employees, look, you get 1 year of pay. We're going to seed your 401k with some money. We're going to take care of you if you will just leave and get off of our books. And what happened is lots of very good people left the company, and that was unexpected. I guess they sort of hoped that the not so stellar performers would take advantage of that. I remember working with individuals that they were like, hey, I've decided to take early retirement. And I was sitting there going, oh no, we need you. And there was a lady from the UK she worked on one of our voice gateways, and she was just vital. Every time I had a question about something, I could just hit her up on chat, and she was there. But she was like, okay, cool, I'm taking early retirement. And these good people found other jobs quickly. So they were basically getting a year of salary and 401k money and just went off and found other endeavors. It was, that voluntary early retirement, that impacted the teams and morale very negatively. And then Cisco, they streamlined, I use air quotes here, they streamlined the sales, services, and engineering organizations. And what that means is 6,500 people lost their jobs. So it was a pretty bad year. And the why behind that is this: they just lacked a simple, clear-cut mission. They had sprawled into all of these different markets. They were spread too thin and just doing too much.
It's so interesting to think about this now, particularly in light of the last, 12 months here of watching the what's going on with the tech sector in current times. It was particularly interesting in this case, watching from the outside. I spent all my career in IT, and during this period, watching Cisco go and buy these companies, it was kind of surreal looking from the outside in, saying like, what's going on? It turns out that was a very good question.
Right.
Yeah. What was going on? It's like, there wasn't a mission. It was, right. Somebody had a few good ideas and thought that they could capitalize on them, but.
Right. Yeah. And that's not our assessment of, hey, they lacked a clear-cut mission. That's what we're reading. I mean, that's the after action information that we're getting in the news and, what the company has said itself. So it was not a good time. And thankfully they admitted it and, made some adjustments. But for the employees, it was a painful time, and it was sad. I mean, we lost some really good people at that time. So not fun.
Yeah.
But that's a company level. So if you're leading an organization, that may apply. If you're a member of an organization, you can take note of this as well, because you need to, as an employee, make sure that what you're doing is supporting the mission. So we'll get more into that. But as an individual, the same principles apply. You've got to identify the mission. You have to define that for yourself. And the way you do that as an individual, I mean, you just start with this. Where are you in life? Are you a young adult? Are you middle-aged? Are you a retiree? Where do you want to be with regards to your job, your business, maybe your fitness, your relationships? Where do you want to be with that? And this is the same question you ask of a company. What specific things are you going to do or build for the world? And I say that advisedly. I ask that question about what you'll do because of a very simple principle. I was listening to the Jordan Peterson podcast, and he pointed out that responsibility is the key to a meaningful life. So you have to take on responsibility for something. And the idea, let's say you win the lottery, or maybe you've built up a company and you're a tech startup and you're 30 years old and you've sold your company or you've won the lottery, whatever the case, you're sitting on a mountain of cash. Sitting on the beach doing nothing is not a good answer or not a good plan for your life, because first off, you're going to go crazy. We have tons of examples of the idle rich sitting around doing nothing. They're usually very unhappy, and there's usually a lot of negative drama around them. I mean, there's a biblical story about King David. He's at the pinnacle of his success, and he stayed at home while his army went off to war. He had not much to do, and it led him into trouble with a woman. So he ended up with another man's wife, Bathsheba. The backdraft from all of that just destroyed his family. It split up the kingdom, and it just caused so many problems with the entire nation, actually, because you're talking about a king who's sitting around doing nothing. And fell into idle drama. So not good. So that's why I say, what specific things are you going to do or build for the world, even if you've got all the money that you need, which is not the case for most of us. But let's talk about an example. I was recently at a wedding, and I sat down with this young man. We were eating near one another. We started talking. He's in grad school, and it struck me that he conveyed a simple, clear-cut mission for his life. He was studying sports management because he has a goal of attaining a job in sporting event management, either at the collegiate or the professional level. So what he's done there is he's put a stake in the ground, and that mission is driving his actions. And then he went a step further, and he's communicating that mission with others. First off, it motivates him. It makes him accountable. He's saying, this is what I'm doing. And so that's going to help influence him to continue on. But he also has the benefit of getting feedback from others. Even as an individual, you need to identify your mission in life. And that could be, simple little goals for everyday matters, or just, what direction is your life going to take as a career or a business or major decisions like that. But here's the takeaway. Without a clear mission, you're just basically adrift at the mercy of life's currents. Activity without goals, that can actually be counterproductive. I mean, you could literally end up doing a lot of stuff, but accomplishing nothing.
And I have been there and done that.
Yes.
Yes. I know firsthand, if you don't have a direction and a mission, you wind up doing a whole lot of nothing.
Right.
Not literally nothing, but nothing that goes anywhere.
Right.
Nothing that goes anywhere, that accomplishes anything major or moves you forward. Kind of just stuck.
Yeah.
You have to know where you're going.
Agreed. We can all learn from this. Next step. So you've defined your mission. The next step is you have to plan your mission, because there's this old adage that says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Now, why? Why do you plan the mission? Because a plan, quite simply, it puts legs on the vision that you've established here. And I recently read an article from Harvard Business Review, February 28th, 2019. The title of the article is Why Visionary Leadership Fails. Now, visionary leadership, it's a popular catchphrase. They use it for companies, for churches, for many organizations. Visionary leadership is seen as key to what the tech industry and everyone calls strategic change in companies. Because visionary leadership, what does it do? It sets the strategic direction. It tells a story to give people the why. And the goal is to inspire people to embrace change. But this article points out that there are problems with visionary leadership when, first off, there's no alignment between the person telling the story and the people who have to actually implement the vision. And that's kind of the issue we run into, because oftentimes you establish a vision and you communicate it out to your team, and there's no plan to accomplish the mission. And the problem here is that you're just kind of hoping the universe brings your vision to life, or you're hoping that the team picks up your vision and puts legs on it and carries it out. But that's just not going to happen. It's not realistic. We got another story here. There's a website called achieveit.com, achieveit.com. There's an article written by Chelsea Damon, and the title is Notorious Examples of Strategic Planning Failure. And one of the stories that was shared in that article is about Hewlett-Packard from 2002. At the time, the CEO was Carly Fiorina. And in 2002, HP had actually merged with Compaq, but they had no plan to integrate the companies. And as you can imagine, there was tons of friction between groups. The software systems, they weren't integrated, so everyone's operating on different systems. There was a fundamental lack of trust, but at all levels. And then they ended up with all these fiefdoms struggling for prominence within the company. As you can imagine, company performance suffered.
Big time. Being in the industry at the time and watching it was just sad. They brought two companies together and they still acted like two companies. The Compaq teams, they still saw the HP brand as their competition. It's like, we've got to beat them.
Right.
We've got to beat them. And HP was the same way. We have to beat Compaq.
Working against one another, yeah.
Working directly against one another. Oh my word. It was just so sad.
Painful.
Yeah.
And it's easy for me to sit here. We're looking back with hindsight and all the analysis and everything. So yeah, it's like, I'm sure the people leading the company had great intentions in all of this. So things happen like that. It was painful to watch. So, and I'm sure very painful for the employees and the leaders. So, but yeah, you've got to plan. If you don't, you're likely to not enjoy as much success as you want, or worst case, you could fail. But where do we start with planning? I just submit that you need to break your overall mission down into simple, clear, and attainable goals. And there's a concept called SMART goals. It's an acronym. It's very well known, but SMART goals, you need to start there. And the acronym, it's SMART. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So the specific goal, you need to identify exactly what it is to be accomplished. Measurable, you got to be able to track it. So you can't have these abstract goals that you can't determine whether or not you've accomplished it. So it has to be measurable. It has to be achievable. I mean, you can't just come out and say, hey, next year this time, I'm going to be CEO of HP Compaq or whatever the company is. It's just not achievable, not in 1 year, especially if you're an individual contributor with no track record of leading a company. So it has to be an achievable goal. So be realistic about it. It also has to be relevant, meaning you have to make sure that it's aligned with your overall mission. So there's this interplay between, your overall mission and maybe adding additional goals along the way. So it has to be relevant. And then it also has to be time bound. Because if you don't set a deadline to achieve the goal, you could really just sit around and drift and just not do anything to get it done. So SMART goals. And let's look at some examples. Here's a good example. Amazon. I mean, you think about that company. It was started by Jeff Bezos back in the day when the internet was just brand new and everybody was like, wow, you mean I can communicate with other computers from my house? Well, yes, you can. And Jeff Bezos saw the opportunity there and he said, you know what? I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to move across the country and I'm going to start selling books on the internet. He started that in 1994. And it was a very well-defined goal. He's like, I want to sell books on the internet. So it was achievable. It was measurable. It was relevant. And it was, I don't know if he had a time bind on that, but, I'm sure he did have some goals there, but it was successful. He started selling books and then they ended up expanding beyond books and added 5 additional product categories. So the SMART goal was to sell books. And then as that grew, they expanded into 5 product categories. It ended up growing into a global e-commerce business, as everybody knows. And then they said, okay, well, look, and this is the relevant concept here. It's relevant for them to then expand into a global shipping company because they were paying UPS and the post office and FedEx to ship their products. And then they started saying, you know what? Why don't we get our own planes? Why don't we get our own shipping stuff and start doing it ourselves? So that was added to the business. And then they said, okay, this is cool. Why don't we allow third parties to list items online on our stuff for sale? So they expanded into that business. And now they got into the business of offering cloud computing services to companies through Amazon Web Services. They started out small and then they just kept adding. And I would submit that they were pursuing the SMART goals concept, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals. And as of June 2024, the company was valued at over $2 trillion. So that's a good example on a company side. Now, for an individual, I mean, let's just take weight loss, for example. I need to lose a few pounds. If I'm implementing a SMART goal for weight loss, I would say, hey, I want to lose 15 pounds over the next 3 months. That's 1.25 pounds per week. That's something I can measure. And then my goal is to accomplish this. I'm going to use my FitnessPal app on my phone. I'm going to start tracking my calories. I'm going to come up with a reasonable meal plan my meals, shop for groceries, and then realize that I'm going to have bad days and I'm going to falter. But when that happens and I overeat, I'm going to pick up where I left off. That's an example of a SMART goal for weight loss.
being able to identify the goals, to put these parameters around them is just so critical to making progress, to making forward progress. I mean, you mentioned the weight loss. It's like over the course of like a year, I lost a lot of weight. And
congrats on that, by the way.
Well, thank you. Bad news is I've recently added some back, but
that's my story too.
But being able to have a plan and to execute that plan and to have a timeline of saying, okay, here's where I want to get at this time was just hugely beneficial to me and helped keeping me on track with the goal. And part of the reason I've gained some of that back was because I kind of lost track of the goal. Got kind of distracted with other things going on. And
in our summer break, I got complacent. I ate a bit too much. So I've got to get back on track now. So I'm feeling you.
Java chip Oreos, man.
Just so tasty.
Have you had the Java chip Oreos?
No. Now that I'm going to get fatter now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we found some at the grocery store on vacation, and after going for about a week, and at the end of the week, it's like those Java chip Oreos and were gone.
Ooh.
My family was like, Dad, we think you're the only one that was eating those.
This episode sponsored by Java chip Oreos. Not really, but that'd be nice if they did, though. But
we're open to that.
So tasty, but so planning. You got to start with SMART goals and actually identify how you're going to get from point A to point B. Next step, you need to foster open communication. This is super important. Now, if you're an organization, you've set out your SMART goals, you've identified what you're going to do to accomplish these goals. You need to have a culture internal to your team that fosters open communication. You're going to be asking questions. Hey, here's the plan. Do we have the tools we need? And take feedback from the team. What are any impediments? So people that are working on the day-to-day activities or operations of your organization, they're going to raise their hand and say, hey, look, here's what's going on, and here's what we're going to run into. You need to take that into account. And if you're an individual contributor who's aware of these impediments, you need to communicate those up. Be courageous. And then you're going to ask questions also like, what are we not considering here? And that open communication is really going to be helpful. First off, it'll be a good culture builder because you're getting people's buy-in. You're getting them involved in the mission itself, and they have ownership of it. So that's so good for culture. But when you're inviting, just an example here, you invite ideas and feedback on your strategy and vision. I mean, in past episodes, we talked about Genghis Khan and the Mongols, and when they decided to invade China, Genghis Khan announced it. They had a vote on it because everyone had a voice in that. And then they spent 4 days actually planning the military mission that they were about to embark on. And so that was just vital. And transparency there about limitations, allowing individuals to have a voice, and then making changes to the plan to overcome obstacles. So that's the open communication aspect for an organization. Now, for an individual, you also have to foster that communication. You need to talk to friends. If I'm trying to lose weight, I'm going to talk to people about it. Hey, man, I'm trying to lose 20 pounds by XYZ. I probably should go ahead and do that. But anyways, I'm going to be talking to my friends about it because it's going to make me accountable. Hey, how's it going with the weight loss? I've got my wife as well. She's holding me accountable. You sure you want to eat that? So anyways, as an individual, I'm going to talk to my friends about my goals. I'm going to talk to colleagues. I'm going to talk to my mentors about my mission and my goals, and I'm going to get feedback and recommendations and accountability. You need to foster open communication. Okay. Next thing, you need to delegate authority. Now, for the organization, you define the mission, you've come up with a plan, or you kick off on executing the plan. You need to delegate authority down to individuals. This means you're assigning components of the mission to a team or individuals so that they can own it. And then you're telling everyone else in the organization, hey, this team owns this part of the mission. This team's on this part of the mission. And this individual is running with this. And so everybody knows who's who in the zoo. And it really does help to know what everyone else is doing so that you can all work together. Okay. So that's the organization. Now, delegating authority for the individual, you have to realize your time and energy are limited. If you're doing things, using weight loss as an example, you may want to hire a coach or pay for online services to take the workload off of anything like planning meals and stuff like that. Here's an example. You want to pay people to do work that diverts you from your daily goals. And you also want to pay people to do work if it's going to speed up your progress. An example of that would be, I was watching an online class about, doing a YouTube channel. And the instructor was like, look, here's how you edit videos, but I don't recommend you edit your own videos because that's a full-time job. You need to hire someone to edit your videos so that you can focus on planning out your next episodes and focusing on your writing and doing your recordings. And I think that was good advice. As an individual, you can delegate authority out to someone else to do some of these things. Here's some more examples. I use an app called Fitbod because it creates workouts for me. I don't want to go on the internet and sit and research and try to figure out what I'm going to do for a workout. I can just get an app on my phone and it'll do it for me. And if you hate cooking, here's another thing. You can pay for a meal service. There are small shops in our area that you can just go pick up prepaid meals. It's pretty expensive, but hey, if it keeps you on track with your meals, it might be worthwhile. Up to you though, not recommending any one thing over another. Bottom line is you need to delegate authority. We're finishing up on the topic of planning the mission here. Just some words of warning. You need to avoid analysis paralysis. That's a phrase that we say oftentimes in the corporate world. You don't want to overthink and you don't want to get bogged down in your planning activities. And here's a famous quote from General George Patton from World War II. He said this: "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week." And that's self-explanatory. You don't want to sit and spend a week on something that you could just come up with a very simple good plan now and execute it today, because speed to market, getting things out there, violent execution in the case of military warfare, those are very important. You don't want to get bogged down in planning. Come up with a decent plan, realize that there are things that you haven't accounted for, and then execute. You got to keep the plan simple. You got to keep them easy to execute. And here's another warning. If you spend more time planning than doing, you got it backwards. You need to be spending time doing. And the planning phase is right at the outset, and then you're spending most of your time executing. But here's the takeaway. Without a plan, you're really just relying on wishful thinking, and you're hoping that the universe is just going to act on your behalf.
There's a I think it's actually a title of a book, but it's a commonly used refrain and, in sort of the motivational world of leadership and stuff. A goal without a plan is just a wish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of a paraphrase of what your takeaway was there. A goal without a plan is just a wish. And,
right.
And two, I think it's also important to understand that if you're struggling with a decision and trying to figure out something, if you're being indecisive, that by itself is a decision.
Mm-hmm.
It is making a choice to not go in a particular direction, which means you're still going in whatever direction you were going before, or not a direction at all.
Yes. Playing on social media on my phone at night. Darn it.
Yeah.
That hits me right where I live.
Yep.
Yes.
Endless scroll. Yeah.
Yes. I get caught up in that.
And it is important to call back to, allowing individuals to have a voice. I think that was another very important piece that's important to me. It's like being a leader and fostering open communication means listening to those that are giving you feedback.
Right.
The people in the trenches are the ones that know what's going on.
Yep.
And sometimes maybe they don't understand, and that's why you're getting the feedback. And so maybe there needs to be some more communication there, but that's what that opportunity is.
Yeah. And as leaders, I mean, if you're leading an organization, it's easy to just get frustrated with people and say, why do you keep asking me these questions? What's going on? You need to take note of what they're saying. I mean, sometimes you're just dealing with a jerk that they don't really need to be there.
that happens. But it is good to be sensitive though. If you're hearing kind of the same question from more than one person, odds are there's probably more people that aren't speaking up. And so there's things that need to be addressed.
Right. Exactly.
Got to pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about that. We've got a little section on measuring results to kind of dig into that. But so that's, I mean, we define the mission, we plan the mission. Now you get to the third phase, execute the mission. Again, this all just seems simple and goofy, but this just really just breaking things down into manageable steps is so helpful for me. And when I get to, I look at it in phases. I'm defining the mission as phase 1. I'm planning the mission in phase 2. Phase 3, I'm executing the mission. And here's a reality check. There's this old military adage that says, no plan survives contact with the enemy. So I've done all of my mission defining. I've done all my planning and everything. And I feel good about myself. And we kick off. And then during execution, you've got to evaluate and adjust as circumstances change. Because if you're talking about a military operation, the enemy gets a vote. If you're in business, the market gets a vote. People might not want your product, and you may have to adjust. That's the reality check when you're in the execution phase. But one thing you can do to mitigate chaos during the execution phase is a process called the OODA loop, OODA. I heard about this listening to the Jocko podcast from a Marine fighter pilot. His name is Dave Burke. And he talked about this OODA loop as a process that was originally developed by a U.S. Air Force colonel named John Boyd. OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. And this is for fighter pilots, but it applies everywhere. And the basic concept behind OODA is that agility can overcome raw power. And also a person or team that can process new information and respond to events quickly has an advantage over everyone else. That's the concept behind it. And here's how pilots apply the OODA loop. But again, this applies to any human endeavor. First thing you need to do after you've kicked off, you're executing your mission, you need to be watchful. You need to observe the situation after your product has gone live or after you've started your mission. Unfolding circumstances are going to emerge. New information is going to come in. And the example that Dave Burke gave was, if you're a fighter pilot, you are going to encounter enemy aircraft or you're going to encounter air defenses in an area that you're operating, and you need to observe what's happening there. And then you orient your frame of reference as that new information comes in. In the case of a fighter pilot, an enemy aircraft makes a turn towards you showing aggression. You have to observe that. You have to orient yourself to that enemy aggression. And then the next step is the D, which is decide on a course of action. And then finally, you just act. In the execution phase, when you're doing this OODA loop, you're constantly observing, orienting, deciding, and acting. And then you continue to observe. And then you're orienting, deciding, and acting. It's just a continual process as you're executing the mission, right?
Yeah. And that's where, not to belabor the negative, but I've seen too many leaders, they observe, they may orient, but then they can't decide.
Yeah.
And then they're kind of, well, we're going to wait, which basically means observe more, and you're kind of stuck there. They never get to the act. And
right.
That's where things then don't go very well.
Yeah, that's true.
It's important when you get new information and orient yourself to, and then let's make a decision and then go do it, execute.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You just triggered a memory. I saw a video of, it was a retired NFL cornerback, and he talked about this. He didn't talk about the OODA loop or anything, but it does apply. He said the teams in the NFL that do the best or have the most success are the teams that make the best adjustments at halftime. So this is an example of the OODA loop in action. You get out there on the field, you're executing your plan, and your opponent may be just crushing you because their plan is better. and they know what you're going to do, and they're way ahead of you, and you're 2 touchdowns behind when you head into the locker room at halftime, and you got to make some adjustments. And the teams that are good at that, observing what happened on the field, orienting themselves and saying, okay, cool, what do we need to do? And then they decide on changes that need to take place, and then they go out in the second half and act. Executing the mission, it is a dynamic, often very chaotic environment where you need to be able to process information and make changes on the fly as you go. Now, a lot of companies don't have any plan, and then they just go out and start executing. And we use the phrase, you're building the airplane in flight. So, so you got to have defining the mission, planning the mission. But when you're executing, that's when you want to start making changes. So execute the mission.
Yep.
You've executed the mission. You've enjoyed some success, or you've had some failures. The next very important step is measuring results. We called it in the military an after action review, or AAR. After every mission, you got to conduct an AAR. And we do this in the corporate world. At the end of every quarter, you conduct an after action review of how things went the last quarter, what things went well, what things didn't go so well, and what do we need to do going forward to make things better. And so the AAR, it's really just an open and honest assessment of how things went. You're looking back. And you have to be careful when you're doing the after action review, because people have to know it's not punitive. And if you as a leader make it punitive, it is going to fail miserably. The heart behind the AAR is, how do we get better? That is the important thing here. You're looking back on that mission and you're asking some questions. Hey, did we accomplish all of our goals? What lessons did we learn through the process? How can we do it better next time? What mistakes did we make? And what additional tools, training, people, processes, what else do we need next time we embark on this mission? And you write all of that down, and then you store it for future reference when you start the next process of defining a mission and planning the mission. For teams, this AAR can be a huge culture builder. I mean, this is the essence of giving individuals a voice in the process. And during the after action, these are individuals taking ownership of their component of the mission. They're criticizing themselves. They're saying, hey, boss, so we did this and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, we made this mistake over here. So next time we're going to do this. It's just so valuable, that AAR. I read another story on the CNBC website. The article's title is 63-year-old CEO shares red flags she sees in employees. Date was July 29th of this year, actually, 2024. And she talked about red flags for employees. Red flag number 1, people lacking integrity. She started talking about, and she focused on managers who don't give credit, or the flip side of that is managers who blame storm and blame people for failures. And, first off, if you're taking credit for other people's work, that's just going to destroy morale. You think that you're getting credit for something, and you're talking, oh yeah, I did this, and I led the team, and oh my goodness, we did. That just destroys your team's morale. So that's a lack of integrity. Red flag number 2, people that are hard to be around. So these are people that just they're just not fun to be around, and it's hard to deal with them. And the CEO in the article, she says, hey, your personality, it'll get you 10 times richer than your intelligence. So be easy to get along with. And then red flag number 3, people who don't live up to the company mantra. And if I can reinterpret that, these are people that are not aligned with the mission. In the AAR, you kind of need to watch out for these things. If you're an individual in the AAR, you need to look at yourself and go, am I trying to take credit? Am I being selfish, trying to take credit for work that someone else may have done? If I'm a leader, my goal would not be to take credit for any good things that happened. You need to lavish that on other people. So that's what you need to do in the after action review. Just be wary of that the after action can be a huge cultural builder. Now, and this applies to whether you're an individual or a leader of a team. Switching over to an individual, you have to do an after action for yourself as well, because it's vital to fostering personal growth. So you can't ignore this. You reach your goal of losing 20 pounds. Sit down and assess what went well, what didn't go well. I need to not bring Cheetos into the house because it will take me off course. That's a good thing to talk about in the after action with yourself and maybe with your spouse. After action review, super important. In that after action review, just to bring this up again, you need to recognize individual achievements coming out of that review. For the organization, you got to give kudos. You got to award people. You have to give promotions. Anybody that's performed well, you have to recognize that because that's going to be a huge boost to morale and it motivates people to work, to do better. And you have to make those awards and everything meaningful. And I'll give you a negative story here about myself. We had something, I won't go into details, but I'll just say that during a military mission, we had something bad happen. And I just did my job and picked up the pieces and moved on. And after the mission, I didn't do anything extraordinary, right? But after the mission, the battalion commander was so eager to show himself as a magnanimous commander that he pulls me out in front of everyone and gives me a Navy Achievement Medal on the spot. Go down and purchase for yourself a Navy Achievement Medal at the PX. That's the post exchange, the grocery store. Anyways, he's like, go down and purchase for yourself a Navy Achievement Medal and we're going to get the paperwork caught up for it. And it was really just a routine part of my job. And it caused my friends to make fun of me because I didn't really do anything extraordinary. So if you're giving out kudos and awards after your after action review, make sure it's meaningful stuff, you know? Same for yourself. If you're awarding yourself, make sure, you're really giving yourself kudos for, you know what? I've lost 15 pounds. So I'm going to award myself not by stuffing my face with Mexican food, but I'm going to reward myself with a run or something. I don't know. I don't like running, so I'm just calling that out. So anyways, as the individual, congratulate yourself, reward yourself. That's so important.
Yep.
Okay. Back out to the highest level here. The takeaway, accomplishing the mission is the number one objective of leadership. And you have to spend time, thought, and energy on this topic before and after executing your mission. There are no shortcuts. You don't want to spend too much time planning. You want to spend most of your time doing, but you have to take care. Define the mission, plan it out, execute, adjust along the way, and then measure results.
After action review is critical and can be so encouraging and motivating to the team.
Yep.
One point I was part of a very high performing team, and some of those after action reviews were some of the most beneficial times for us individually and as a team.
Right.
To sit down and talk about being honest. What was going great? What didn't go great?
Right.
How can we support each other, work together?
Right.
Can be real team building opportunities if done well.
Yeah, you triggered something here because you have to be careful, because if you're in a toxic team, you're just not going to be able to do an after action review. It's just not going to happen. And so you can't do this unless your team has strong bonds and there's a lot of mutual trust there, because the AAR, after action is not punitive. And so I'm thinking of an organization that I was in where there was a lot of ex-military there. This was a civilian job, but it was a very toxic environment and very political. We had a lot of credit takers, and it was just painful to be there. And then one of the credit takers, he came up with the idea, we should do an after action review. And I'm like, oh, please, no.
Yeah.
So
wrong answer.
I'm not doing an after action review because you're going to sit there and blame storm. So yeah, it was, you have to be careful. But yes, just closing out now, the vital objective of leadership is accomplishing the mission. And this applies to yourself as an individual, or if you're leading a team, or if you're a member of a team. You got to focus on accomplishing the mission. And that's broken down into the 4 parts here. Define the mission, plan the mission, execute, and measure results. For us, we would love to hear your thoughts on your stories about funny, not so good stories about accomplishing the mission or not. Look at the episode description here on ways to contact us, and we'd love to hear from you. And in our next episode, we're going to talk about the number 2 vital objective of leadership. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to next time.
Thank you for listening to The Cluttered Path.
Knife, and it seems ugly, blind, and then we are on a ticking uneasy night. This is the cluttered path, stories about life, misguided fortune.